All right, so let's briefly look at the 10 kings. We're going to start in Daniel 2. So Daniel 2 is a foundation for all-time prophecies. If you want to understand all-time prophecies, you have to begin at Daniel chapter 2. Okay. Daniel 2 is a story about King Nebuchadnezzar having a dream. And this is the dream that he has. This is Daniel telling King Nebuchadnezzar what the dream was, because the king could not remember what his dream was. So Daniel says this: Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. So you have an image that has a golden head, his chest and arms are of silver, his belly and thighs are of brass, and his legs are of iron, and his feet are mixed with iron and clay. All right, so then he sees, Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon the feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them in pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken into pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is a dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof. So there's the image with a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet part of iron and part clay. Then this supernatural stone that's cut out without hands flies and hits particularly on the feet. And the whole image is broken to pieces. The wind carries it away. And then that stone becomes a great mountain and fills the whole earth. So that's the dream that he had. Now Daniel's going to give the interpretation. Verse 37. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom and power and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, and the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and has made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So Daniel is telling King Nebuchadnezzar, God has given you all those things. He's giving you a kingdom and power and strength and glory. You are this head of gold. So Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, your kingdom, your power, your strength, your glory is this head of gold, right? So in this timeline, this image that that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream is a timeline of the kingdoms of the earth. And he says that you are the head of gold. So the head of gold represents Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, which was Babylon. And then he says, after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. Okay, so you have, after King Nebuchadnezzar, another kingdom which is inferior, so less power. Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon, was the strongest power in the world at that time. And so another, obviously it had to be an inferior kingdom, would take over them. So think of the image. You have the head of gold, which was Babylon. His breast and arms of silver. You have two arms coming together at the chest. Two kingdoms came together and defeated Babylon. That was the Medes and the Persians. Okay, we're going to learn more about that in Daniel chapter 7. So the Medes and the Persians came together. They were inferior, and they took over Babylon. You can read about that in Daniel chapter 5. And another third kingdom of brass. So Babylon's the first kingdom. Medo-Persia is the second kingdom. A third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. This third kingdom of brass was Greece. They took over Medo-Persia. They were known as the brazen warriors. Their armor was made of brass, and they which shall bear rule over all the earth. So Greece took over the known world through Alexander the Great, and he did it so fast. You're going to read more about that in Daniel chapter 7. So you have Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. Okay, this is the timeline of the earth. It's following just the way God said it would. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall break it in pieces and bruise. And whereas, okay, so you have the fourth kingdom shall rule with iron. The next kingdom that came after the kingdom of brass, after Greece, was Rome. This is known as the Roman Iron Age. The Romans were far more superior in war because iron is much stronger than brass, and so they could just break through the enemy's armor, and their weapons were much far more superior. Okay, Rome was a very brutal and destroying kingdom. So the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, it shall break in pieces and bruise. So this speaks to the roughness of Rome. So Rome is the fourth kingdom. So you have Babylon, the inferior kingdom, Medo-Persia. The third kingdom, brass, is Greece. The fourth kingdom is Rome. We're marching through history now. Whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, and there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly broken. Okay, so let's break this down. What does the iron represent? The iron represents the fourth kingdom, Rome. And that continues all the way, it never leaves, to the feet. There's always a Roman influence. Rome is still active today through the papacy. Okay, so what is the clay? The clay represents the church. How do we get that? The body is made of clay. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. God makes man out of the clay. We are the church. God is the head. The body is the church. The clay represents the church. So what do you have? You have a mixture of church and state. Rome represents the state. The church represents the clay. This is going to be the ruling power when Jesus comes, a blend of church and state. Okay, it'll be part of clay and part of iron. So as Rome dissipates into what? How many toes? 10 toes. Okay, so Rome actually divides. It's very interesting. You have two legs. Okay, two legs in this statue. And Rome divides into the Eastern and Western empires before it collapses. Now, Rome isn't defeated by a kingdom, one kingdom, as were the other ones. You had Babylon was taken over by Medo-Persia. Medo-Persia was taken over by Greece. Greece was taken over by Rome. But Rome is not taken over by one individual kingdom. Rome fragments first into the Eastern and Western Empire, and then it grows so big it can't hold. So barbarian tribes come and take over the kingdom. 10 barbarian tribes. Okay. You can look at this in history. It's very clear. Okay. So Rome fragments into 10 sections. Whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Europe which is what Rome fragmented into. They were always trying to unify Europe, and they did it through arranged marriages. This is one of the ways they tried. So they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of men, but they shall not cleave to one another. So the Bible predicted that Europe would try to reunite itself through royal intermarriage to try to unite Europe, but it would not cleave to one another. It would not stick, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven be set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So Europe would still be here when Jesus comes. And when Jesus comes, he will eventually destroy all these kingdoms. For as much as thou sawest that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it shall break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known unto the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. So God gives, Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar that this stone that comes out will destroy all the previous kingdoms. When Jesus comes, he's going to destroy the whole earth, and his kingdom will last forever. And Daniel says the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. And we've seen this exactly happen through history. Gold, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. These are the four kingdoms that God revealed to Nebuchadnezzar that this would be the timeline of Earth's history. He predicted the mixture of church and state. He predicted the fragmentation of the 10 toes, and he predicted the royal intermarriage, trying to bring unity to these kingdoms. And he predicted that none of that would work. So we have a God that is supernatural, and he knows the future, and he reveals it to kings, and he reveals it to paupers like us, so we can know when he's coming. We can know the signs of his coming. I'll do another video on Daniel 7 and see how Daniel is simply a book of repeating and expanding. Daniel 2 is the foundation. You have to understand Daniel 2. If you don't understand Daniel 2, you will not understand the rest of Daniel or even the book of Revelation. You have to learn and study Daniel chapter 2. It is the big picture of the timeline. And then Daniel will repeat in Daniel chapter 7. Okay, Daniel chapter 5 is when Babylon is taken over by the Medes and the Persians, and that was prophesied prior to that happening also. And then you have Daniel chapter 7. And Daniel chapter 7 is simply a repetition of Daniel chapter 2 with different signs, but it expands. It gives you more information. It gives you more information about the Antichrist. But the Antichrist, if you study Daniel 2 enough, you can get it all from there. Next video.